Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation at Willamette Falls online. I am coming to you today from the sanctuary, where I am here with Amy and Greg and Ashley. We are all maintaining good, healthy distances from one another, but we are here because we have heard from you that it is important to see us in this space. I'm going to start today by lighting our chalice. If you have a chalice at home, if you have a candle, I invite you to go get that and then light yours with me here. I'll give you a moment to go find one. I bet a lot of you know these words by heart. Will you say them with me? Whoever you are, wherever or whatever you come from, you are welcome here, where we are invited into connection and inspired to spiritual growth. Let us leave this hour together refreshed anew, ready to ignite action for justice in the wider world. Come, let us worship together. Our opening words this morning are from the poet Wendell Berry, and when I saw this, it just felt particularly appropriate for these strange times we find ourselves in right now. This poem is called The Real Work. It may be that when we no longer know what to do, we have come to our real work. And that when we no longer know which way to go, we have come to our real journey. The mind that is not baffled is not employed. The impeded stream is the one that sings. Speaking of singing, we're going to go live now to Allison, our music director, who's going to lead us in This Little Light of Mine.
Good morning, everybody. This little light of mine, I hope it's a good familiar one. I will give you word cues. This is our first time trying this where I've pre-recorded the track, but I'm going to sing live. So as usual, we are relying on your generosity in trying these new things. So here we go. This little light. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Building up a world. Building up a world. I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world. I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. This little light. This little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. this little light, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Thank you.
Now is the time for our story for all ages. And so if you have kids, it's time to have them come up. I would call you up if you were here. But for now, you are in my heart, and I am seeing you in my mind's eye as I tell you this story about Persephone. The story of Persephone is a Greek myth, and myths are often the way that we explain things we don't quite understand. And so the ancient Greeks told the story of Persephone to explain the seasons. And in their story, Persephone was the daughter of Demeter. And Demeter was the goddess of the harvest, of the grain, of agriculture in general. And Hades was the god of the underworld. And Hades decided that he wanted to marry Persephone, who was a beautiful young goddess. And instead of, doing the honorable thing and asking her if she might like to marry him, he just kind of decided this. And Zeus, who was the king of all of the gods, said that this was okay. So one day, Persephone was in this beautiful meadow, and she was picking flowers with her maidens, and she wandered a little way away from the group, and all of a sudden, she reaches to pluck this beautiful flower, and the earth below her crumbles, and Hades comes up in this golden chariot driven by 4 beautiful black horses, and he snatched up Persephone and he took her with him to the underworld to be his wife and his queen. Demeter was terrified. You heard this scream from Persephone, and Helios, who is the god of the sun, and Hecate, who is the god of the hearth, both heard this scream. And Demeter heard the scream, but she wasn't close enough to do anything about it. And she runs to go find what happened to Demeter, or to Persephone, and she can't find her. And so she wanders the earth looking for her daughter and longing for her daughter. And because Demeter was the goddess of agriculture and all of the crops, she was angry that her daughter had been taken and stolen. And so she put the kibosh on all the crops growing. And everything died and withered and went away. And eventually the people were starving because there was no grain and there were no crops growing. And so Zeus, who was the king of all the gods, realized what was going on, realized that this kind of couldn't continue the same way. And so he sent Hermes, who is the messenger god, to the underworld to bring Persephone back to her mother. And the divine messenger did that. He went and he picked up Persephone. However, Persephone, during this time that she was there, she had tasted some pomegranate seeds. No big deal, right? Except that there was this very strange law that said that if she ate anything while she was in the underworld, she had to stay there. Hades loved Persephone, wanted her to remain in the underworld as his wife. But Zeus and Demeter said, yeah, we can't do that, because if Demeter's not happy, nobody's happy. If Mama's not happy, nobody's happy. If Mama's not happy, everybody's starving to death. And so they worked out a thing where Persephone stayed in the underworld for a certain number of months each year and was Hades' wife and the queen of the underworld. But during the rest of the year, she came back and lived on Earth with her mother. And so her mother kind of made a deal too. She said, all right, but when Persephone is in the underworld, nothing's going to grow. And so when Persephone comes back to the earth, we have spring, We have flowers blooming and crops growing that last through the summer as long as Persephone is up with her mother on top of the earth. And then when she goes down for winter, the earth goes quiet and still, and nothing really grows. And that was how the Greeks explained the season. Now would be the time when we had special music and we had the worship associate doing a reflection. And then we'd move into the offering. I know some of you have probably wondered about the offering because we haven't done one online. How do you do an offering online? And the answer to that question is you can mail in your checks to the congregation, the same as many of you already do. And the other thing is that you can go to our donate button on our website. Our website is UUCWF, Unitarian Universalist Congregation at Willamette Falls, so just UUCWF.org. And if you go and you see our website and you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the website, you will see an orange or yellow button that says donate. And so if you go down there, you can donate either by credit card or through PayPal. And we invite you to do that. We are paying all of our staff. We are keeping the programs of the church running online as best we can. And we also totally realize that we have folks that are out of work and aren't going to be able to pay their pledges. And we also have renters who are having to close and are not being able to pay their rent. And so if you are able to help us out at this time, we appreciate that. Thank you. And today we are also starting Joys and Sorrows online or here. If you have not gotten to me with a joy or sorrow and you want to type one into the chat box, you are welcome to do that. I did have several people email me, and so I am going to do Joys and Sorrows here today. We're going to do them in the way that our youth do them in their religious education classes. And they do them instead of using candles and fire, they do them with stones and water. And we're going to do that today, partially because having a bunch of candles behind my head doesn't sound like a brilliant idea, honestly. There is a video online of a priest in England who set himself on fire while leading the worship in his congregation. And so we're going to try and avoid that and make sure that our kids feel part of this ritual as well. And so today I'm going to put some stones into our bowl. Our first stone, and I'm going to let you know that I'm just going to use first names for this because this will go on YouTube later. And so we're just going to use first names for this today. Louisa lights a candle for her niece and her husband, both of whom have the coronavirus. They're both at home, and she is hoping that they will be well enough to stay there. Joan and John light a candle for their friend Greg, who passed away on Saturday morning, and their thoughts are with his sons, Travis and Alex. Joan is also grateful for the healing energy and support that are sent to her as she recovers from her surgeries. Skylar is grateful that she escaped death recently. In the midst of a battle with stage 4 kidney disease, she had been unable to eat for a month. And she said that a friend brought her sushi on Friday night, and she was able to eat that and keep it down. And she said she is so grateful for every day that she is given, for her family and friends, and for, quote, you and the church and the sun and the skies, heroes and cowards, and all things pleasant and unpleasant that make this world go around and help you grow in consciousness and love. We're with you, Skylar. Elaine reports that she has a joy and that her joy is having so much family time. From watching movies and reading to playing games, exercising, and eating lots of meals together, I am enjoying this downtime with my kids and my husband. And Morena wanted to share that she sent out a joy-filled video of a dog leaping into piles of leaves. I have seen this video. It is indeed filled with joy. You should find it. And in that process, a friend of hers that she hadn't really heard from in 15 years, who'd kind of been on radio silence, reconnected with her, and that they have found some peace and healing in that. And so she is grateful for that. And we're grateful for you too, Morena. I hope you read the chat and see other joys and sorrows that have been named today. I will put some stones in for those. And then the kids have a ritual that I really love, where after they put joys and sorrows in the bowl, they pour water in to cover the joys and sorrows in the love and care of this community, letting us know that we do not hold those joys and sorrows alone. Will you pray with me? Spirit of life and love, we are finding joy in unexpected places, and we are so grateful for that. Some of us are having a hard time finding joy, and some of us are sick, and some of us will be sick, and some of us know people who are sick. And even aside from the pandemic and the virus, there are still other things always that happen in our lives that are joys and sorrows. Life keeps turning. Be with us, O Spirit of love and life. Be with us in this congregation as we gather together in whatever ways we can, reaching out, touching one another not with hands, but with the tendrils that come from our hearts. May it be so. Keep us safe. Keep us finding joy. Blessed be, and amen. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stories of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the heart, giving life the shape of justice. Roots from rainbows, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Our reading today is by the poet Lynn Unger, who is a Unitarian Universalist minister. This one is called Accounting, and it was written 4 days ago. She said, how easy it is to get pulled under by the riptide of numbers, the grip of statistics dragging us out in their litany of loss. Some numbers are too large to reckon, knowing that each number is a life. We don't yet know how to mourn the particulars of these sums. For now, count smaller things. Raindrops on the roof, thousands. Comfort in a time of drought. Trees visible from my window, 6. One decked out in the fluffy pom-poms of spring. Eggs in the refrigerator, 8. Enough for breakfast and possibly cake. Birds in the bush, 2. Natalie attired in black and russet and spots. Dogs at my feet, also 2. Both happy that we're together. I don't know if there is some grand accounting at the end, a God who will weigh your soul against a feather. It seems unlikely, but one way or another, it's probably worth considering what counts. My dear ones, what are we drawing from these days? What is giving you hope? What is getting you through? We are all doing what we can. As I wrote this homily sitting on my couch yesterday, I was giggling because the dad and 2 kids who live across the street are jogging several laps around their house. Dad, girl, maybe 6 or 7, boy, maybe 9, just laps. After a few, they ran the other way, and this time the girl was leading and dad was bringing up the rear. And then they started playing follow the leader and running around the tree. Whatever gets you through. In Unitarian Universalism, along with our 7 principles, we have 6 sources that we draw from, places that we look to for wisdom. We don't have one sacred scripture that we look to for all the answers. Rather, instead, we draw from the following sources: direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder, affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. Words and deeds of prophetic people which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Wisdom from the world's religions, which inspires us in our ethical and spiritual life. Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. Humanist teachings, which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science and warn us against idolatries of the mind and spirit. And finally, spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions, which celebrate the sacred cycle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. They are good sources for wisdom at any time. But this isn't any time. I am thinking that March has been at least a year long, frankly. My daughters are home safely from college, which I am profoundly grateful for. But they are missing their friends and their independence, which is frankly a giant bummer. My partner is heading off to their job as a nurse in the emergency department, 3 days a week, 12 hours at a time, worrying and waiting for what they know is coming down the pike. Will it be cataclysmic or merely hellacious? We don't know yet. We are trying to do new things in new ways, or we are worried about being out of work, or we are worried about being exposed at work, or we are figuring out how to run Zoom meetings with cats and children clamoring for our attention. Yesterday, Marcella was so desperate to see the faces of folks she didn't know that I took her with me to Trader Joe's to stock up on groceries, and it actually helped. So what can our sources teach us in a time of quarantine? Our first source is direct experience of transcending mystery and wonder. Direct experience. What are you feeling these days? Whatever it is, it's okay. Like in normal times, it is not always okay to act on our feelings, but it is okay to have them. Sometimes admitting to ourselves what we are feeling is a great first step. Take a few moments to really figure out what you are feeling. Notice what's really going on for you, and then figure out appropriate ways to deal with that. Are you feeling powerless? Maybe you could offer to help someone else, or call and send a note to someone who might be lonely. There is nothing like taking action to stop feeling powerless. Are you feeling overwhelmed at the news or full of despair? Maybe it's time to sink into a good novel or play silly games with your family. You are not responsible for knowing every piece of news, I promise. Are you feeling isolated? The girls and I have enjoyed connecting with family friends on Zoom. It is good to see fresh faces. If you have cabin fever, can you go for a walk outside? Stay away from other people, but we are allowed to walk or scoot or roll. I know that that has been one of my saving graces these days, and I am so grateful that it is spring and there are flowers in bloom and beautiful things to notice everywhere. Maybe you're just feeling grateful that you finally have some downtime with your family. That's an okay feeling too. You can celebrate that enforced slowing down. It is a great thing to remember a time before schedules got so crazy and we could just enjoy one another without having to rush to get somewhere. The second source is words and deeds of prophetic people. I know that I am being inspired by colleagues and friends on Facebook, by all the new poetry Lynn Unger is writing, by the songs that are coming out of these times. Linda Hirschhorn, a cantor, has written one that I have just had on repeat in my head these days. In these hard times, there will always be singing, there will always be singing in these hard times. And if you're online at all, these things are everywhere, all over. People are posting art and songs and music. I watched a free concert on Facebook with the Indigo Girls last week. Joy and art abounds, my friends. Go find it. Or maybe it's time to settle in and get to some of those books on your bookshelf that you've never found time for. Or return to some old favorites that you find comforting. Our third source is wisdom from the world's traditions and religions, One thing that many religious traditions have in common is the idea of spiritual practice. Eric shared a Yoga Nidra practice on our tidings list. And there are so many different ways of practicing meditation, particularly. In a nutshell, the idea of religion is the idea that there is something greater than ourselves. And what better time to sink into that feeling that we are a part of something greater. Buddhism teaches us that suffering is an integral part of life, and that one of our jobs is simply to accept that and not fight it. Practice the simplest form of meditation. Just notice your breath going in and out. For some folks right now, breathing is impossible. So while we can, let's pay ours some attention. Breathe in peace. Breathe out love. Jewish and Christian teachings that call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. Right now, one of the clearest ways that we can love our neighbors is by staying home and staying away from other people. Right now, my friends, loving our neighbors means protecting them from this virus. There was a doctor who tweeted something that really made me look at this in a new way. He said, don't act like you're trying to keep from getting infected. Act as though you are already infected and are trying to keep from infecting someone else. It is harder to ask for help. It is harder to realize that we might be fragile. But most of us can realize that we don't want to hurt other people. And right now, staying home is the surest way to not hurt other people. Loving our neighbors means not spreading the virus through contact. Loving our neighbors also means not hoarding things. Remember last week, if you survived this thing with full pantry, but your neighbors have starved, you didn't do it right. See if there are folks that you can help. There are so many neighborhood groups online where you could grab the church directory and call a couple of people. See if anyone could use a porch drop-off. The fifth principle is humanist teachings which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science. This is really an important one right now. Without going into overwhelm, we don't have to listen to them 11 hours a day. But it is good to listen to the scientists on this one. And I might suggest that you only listen to politicians who are listening to scientists. We are still learning about this disease, but what we know of it already is that it has a pretty long incubation period and a pretty long infectious period, and you can spread it even if you don't have any symptoms. This means that we are not going to be back to normal by Easter. It's not going to be safe yet. We will be doing this for quite a while, and I know that that is hard and scary for some of you, my friends. Day by day, day by day. Give yourself something to look forward to every day. A walk, a bath, a phone call, time with a book. Give yourself something to look forward to each week. Baking cookies, checking in with a friend, watching a funny movie. Last night we held a virtual dinner party. The two other families, some of my best friends, people that I celebrate my birthday with, and my family got onto Zoom and we ate dinner and we talked together for 2.5 hours. And it felt so good, I think we might do it every week. Something my daughter Marcella said that really rings true for me is that we are so lucky this happened now, when we have the technology we do. You can watch a television show on Netflix with friends across the country and type comments to each other. We can host virtual church services on Zoom. We can order groceries online. We can have breakout groups for coffee hour. We are so very, very lucky in some very important ways. And I know it is still hard not to be able to touch one another, not to be able to hug our grandkids or our parents or our grandparents. But we don't have to be isolated. There are ways to be together. If you can't figure out how, call me and we'll figure it out together, okay? Our final source is spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions, which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. And this is another one that is saving me these days, my friends. I am so grateful that this is happening in spring, when we can go for walks and I could take take photos of flowers and flowering trees and smell the jasmine blooming. It is keeping me together right now. Over our postlude, we will watch a slideshow with pictures that I've taken, about half of which in the last week or so. I read a really lovely book by Sasha Sagan, who is the daughter of Carl Sagan and Anne Droyan. Sasha was raised as an atheist Jew in a family that lived and breathed awe and wonder, but with science rather than religion as the foundation of that wonder. And she writes movingly of ritual and celebration that one can do as a person or a family. She writes of the importance of ritual as a touchstone, something done daily, as simple as the first cup of coffee, something done weekly, something done monthly, something done yearly. But she also writes about rituals for the seasons, and it was the chapter on spring that struck me right now. First, because it is a miracle that our planet tilts, just enough to give us seasons. If we rotated at the same point around the sun, all of the days would be the same length. But probably because our planet was struck by a meteor millions of years ago that knocked Earth just a little off center, we rotate like this. And we have longer days and shorter days throughout the year, summer and winter. Throughout history, humans have written legends and stories about spring, like the story of Persephone. Sagan writes, all these spring legends are about suffering and heartbreak giving way to joy. Each contains a secret, a hidden miracle, offering hope when all seems lost. This is spring itself. The themes of renewal, rebirth, resurrection, and rescue from death are not religious ideas in conflict with nature, but are rather rituals inspired by the biology of plants and animals. She writes, my mother invented a festival just for me, Blossom Day. I would wait day after day until there was indisputably a blossom on the dogwood tree. My mother and I would go out and marvel at it, and then plan something like a tea party. Some spring day, she writes, we will stand at that same dining room window with my daughter and bask in the wonder of it. That tree that seems dead but isn't. Something new is growing. The weather will be better soon. The days will be longer. The sunshine is coming. It still feels magical, miraculous even. Dear ones, as we get through this pandemic together, I invite you to lean into whatever it is that gets you through this time. Rituals, like gathering together on Sunday mornings at 10:30. The beauty of the earth, helping your neighbors, feeling your feelings, science and wonder, connecting to your congregation, and feel free to bake cookies too. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. I invite you to take a deep breath, and maybe invite Amy to run into the office and grab the little meditation bowl for me that I meant to bring out and didn't. I invite you to take a deep breath, settle into your seats, rejoice in the act of breathing, Close your eyes if you like. And figure out what it is that will help you get through. What is it that is giving you life these days? What is it that is giving you hope? I invite you into the silence of your own hearts. I'm going to invite us to go to Allison and we'll sing our closing hymn.
Our closing hymn is Woyaya. If you have your Singing the Journey hymnal at home, it's number 1020. And I am putting the lyrics into the chat. There they are. And so we will sing through that twice, or just enjoy listening. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be heavy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. We are going. Heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be heavy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, 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 yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Allison. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. I am so grateful that this is part of your touchstone, my friends. I am so grateful that gathering together has meaning for you. I appreciate that more than you know. We're going to extinguish our chalice now with the words we usually say. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. I invite you, excuse me. I invite you to stay with us after the postlude. We're going to do virtual coffee hour again. If you are still on at the end of the virtual postlude, we will put you into breakout groups. Trying to speak to 100 different people online is unwieldy and doesn't work very well. So we will put you into breakout groups of 8, something like that, and invite you to talk with one another. Last time that was a real hit for a lot of people, and so we will invite you to stay there for half an hour or so if you'd like. I am so grateful for your presence here among us. As you go from your homes today, as you stay in your homes, but you go from this place right here, hold on to this community. Last night, gonna make me cry. Last night, I prayed for you all. I looked over to this side of the congregation, and in my head, I figured out where you sat. And I just went through the pews and through the sections, and I didn't forget about the balcony. And then I went and did the teachers and the religious education wing. You are in my heart. We are together in important ways that count. And that matters. Go in peace and go in love, my friends. Blessed be, and amen.